You're tuned in to RX Radio.
When did you start? I feel like every podcast just starts with some comment about nicotine.
Yeah, we need to get a nicotine sponsor on this.
You have my full support.
Yes. If you're listening and you know someone that can hook us up with a nicotine sponsor, hit me in the DM.
So, walk me through because today we're going to talk about supplements. And for those of you, welcome back. This is RX Radio. I realized we'd never, ever do that. And every other podcast I listen to does a little intro.
Doesn't Lundy still do it in the beginning, though?
It's true. It is Lundo. Yeah. All right. So we're in it. We're in one on this. But okay. So when did nicotine start, or did it start and stop, which it tends to do for most people?
Yeah, it was kind of that. I in high school into college, I chewed a little bit, but not a lot. I don't know. I didn't always have a can of chew on me. I chew a can of chew and then not buy one for a couple weeks, and then on that kind of off and on thing. And I got out of it for a long time until you and I were in Australia. I think it was maybe 21, 22. And I think you were doing a podcast with Kyle Trainer or someone, and it was me.
Shit.
Yeah, it was me and Mac and Luke Lehman. We're just kind of hanging out.
Drugs
and
will be around.
Yeah, and Luke pulls out those little 2 milligram lozenges, and he starts passing them out. I'm like, all right, I used to like nicotine. I haven't done this in probably fucking maybe 10 years at the time. And then I realized I still like nicotine.
That's funny how that works.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Would you ever smoke cigarettes?
Would I or have I?
Have you? I know you probably
Answer's yes to both.
For some reason, the Pennsylvania driver's license, just there's a picture of you somewhere hacking a dart at some backyard party.
I mean, I've smoked a few cigarettes here and there. It's not necessarily something I like doing. Yeah. I don't like the involvement of the airways. I don't know. I've been hit in the face a lot. I'm not the best at breathing, so anything that inhibits that even further is just not that fun for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fuck it. I'll smoke some. If anyone knows a way to get a cigarette sponsorship on this podcast.
Right. While you're at it, let us know if you know any tracheotomy. The way you take to stuff, you're going to be smoking out of a hole in your throat. So that was because for me, my supplement regime has been in some ways very static, but also in some ways sort of you could tell the story of my training through looking at my supplement cupboard, right? As a kid, there's a lot, and there's a few covers. So just depending on what the stuff you buy at the store, as a kid, stims were it.
Oh yeah, dude.
The idea, I knew more about vasodilation as a 60-year-old kid. The reading, I was so wait, because it's NO-Xplode came out right about the time, and this is dating ourselves, when the first Fast and the Furious movie came out.
Oh man, what an era!
Right? This was simpler times. R.I.P. Paul Walker. But it's because the reason I bring Fast and Furious up is nitric oxide sounds a lot like nitrous oxide. Yeah. So you're man, this has got to be a good pre-workout. There's literal gas in here, and you open it up and it's just a bunch of powder, and you're okay. But I mean, supplementation for me is always, or at least started around training itself. Pre-workout supplementation is something that was my first. I think I took pre-workout before I took protein powder. I think I'm accurate in that.
Okay. Not the same for me. I definitely started taking protein first. And I do remember my first time trying NO-Xplode. But I guess you could technically say my first pre-workout was a Red Bull.
No, it's a cop out. No, because you gotta go.
Let me say this though. It started the ritual of looking for something before my workouts to give me more energy for the workout.
I love the way you worded that, like scavenging. It started the ritual of me just licking things I thought had stimulants on them.
It started with Copenhagen, then it went to Red Bull, and then it went straight to meth with Jack 3D.
Oh my God. So you were part of that. You were a Jack 3D.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
That's no idea.
Oh, that's the best high that a teenager in the early 2000s could get. Oh, man.
Yeah, I got the label of NO-Xplode up here. And it's just, I don't know if they've changed it, but it's one I really miss. And I think the prosumer, right? The supplement space has obviously kind of been inundated. Podcasts, I think, are actually a really big part of, the market's adaptation to the way they present products. Yeah. If this is NO-Xplode's current marketing, then hats off to you for not learning anything in the last 20 years, because going through their proprietary blends, there's a myogenic matrix.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Creatine blend, creatine monohydrate, creatine anhydrous, creatine peptides, hydrolyzed whey protein isolate, creatine monohydrate, creactivate, taurine.
Okay.
And so on and so forth.
This is all proprietary.
All proprietary. So
it doesn't tell you much.
No. So there's a 10.5 gram blend of how big? These scoops were quite large. If I do,
they were big. Yeah.
Yeah, they were 20 grams.
Bitch, if you weren't doubling up.
Yeah, that was crazy, dog. But yeah, half of their scoop is proprietary. And it's, relatively speaking, because I'm going to pull up the Jack 3D ingredient list, and it wasn't a lot. I don't remember there being a lot of ingredients. Oh my God, they have
1,3. Was it dimethylalamine?
I'm going to, for you readers following along at home, I'm going to tell you what I see on the screen. When you type Jack 3D ingredients, it gives you this cool AI Google Gemini overview. But to the side, it has some scholarly articles. And the title of the first peer-reviewed, publicly, PubMed article is Hemorrhagic Stroke in Young Healthy Male Following Use of Sports Supplement Jack 3D. Oof. PubMed. This has a PubMed ID. 26-year-old male presented to a military treatment facility in Afghanistan after taking a weightlifting supplement called Jack 3D with a severe headache, and was subsequently found to have suffered a Dejean-Rousey variant right thalamic hemorrhagic stroke. Okay. How dare you talk about Jack 3D this way? I'm sure there's a lot of shit going on in Afghanistan that could also cause someone a stroke. But anyways, may predispose stroke to hemorrhagic and also revealed substantial product, has no readily apparent disclaimer warning. I wonder how many scoops the guy took.
3 was standard for me by the end of it.
So here's the thing. I don't know this guy. Obviously, I have nothing but the utmost respect for people in the U.S. military. I have friends that fought overseas, probably around a similar time that this was published. Let me see. I don't have a journal date here.
It's got to be like
2012.
They still had the good shit by then? Damn.
If you're in the military, you can find stuff. Well, where do you think the dimethylamine probably comes from? Right? The poppy fields are just down. Like, you take a left at Baghdad, you'll run into like the Jack 3D. It's all like Arabic script and then just Jack 3D. But it's like the one thing I know about my friends that served overseas is they like to push the limits. So I'd imagine this guy was like looking at 3 scoops in the rear view mirror. Like, dude, and there's an animal. So there's a lot of stroke. I mean, if you think about sort of the the mechanisms of stroke, it's not uncommon that things that mess with your vascular tone may have some effect here. But there's another case report. This is how we grew up, right? Like, this was the most popular thing. Think about this. This is something that it's, if you were born in the year 2000, think what it took for things to go viral without social media. Like almost like it almost doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like how did the word of mouth spread that this supplement was just something was different about it? Like you didn't have, I don't know. When Jack 3D came out, I wasn't on any form of social media. Maybe it had MySpace.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But it was well established that this pre-workout was different.
Oh yeah. When was the crack epidemic? Like the 80s? Was that the 80s?
You talking like Freeway Rick Ross, like the whole CIA?
Yeah,
okay.
Ripping Ross. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, man, I think it's akin to that. It's like if you know, you know. Like this stuff gets you high, but this stuff gets you high, and that's like how it spread in the gym because it was always the bros, and there was like variations of this too. Like I remember another one. It was like 1 MR, and it stood for like one more rep or something, but it was like the same like meth, it's same container, like same small scoop, but like the people in the gym that they knew that this was the one.
So I'm actually looking on the internet for a label of like what the supplement facts actually were. And so I think the interesting part is none of the labels I'm seeing are actually showing dimethylamylamine as an ingredient.
Interesting.
Do you remember at all looking at the label and seeing dimethylamylamine, like 1,3-dimethylamylamine?
So
okay, so it was listed when we were kids.
I worked at a GNC in Edwardsville, Pennsylvania when I was in college. And I remember that like guys from the military would come in and be like, "Oh, we can't take this because like so and so popped for meth on the drug test when they took this."
That's insane. And then you were like, "I'm hiding all of this in the back."
Oh yeah. No, that was like I feel like we're the same person in this way. So like it had to be the same. But like whenever there's a supplement out that someone like died from, it's like, fuck, I got to go grab that before they take it off the shelves.
100%. Yeah. I stockpiled. I definitely had 3 or 4. So
Yeah.
all to say that this was sort of my first foray into supplementation was it. And I think to a certain degree, this is still, if the supplement budget dried up tomorrow, I still think that if I had to put it somewhere, that I would be putting it into something I take before training.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the number one thing for me, I have to say it's got to be whey protein. So like that's more important than a stimulant to me because like I'll drink coffee, I'm fine with that as a pre-workout, but like for me to have progress in the gym, I need to be eating enough food and enough protein, and I am just not good at eating food. So like I need to have like an easy source of macronutrients. So it number one above anything has to be whey protein for me.
That's so interesting. I mean, that I think was one of the big differences. Like I vary food. Like I have no problem with food. I can smash food. Like you've been out to dinner with me. It's disgusting. But it's like, I guess I'm almost on the flip side. Like if I'm not, I don't want to say the right mood to train, but like I'll use the technical term arousal. Like if I don't have some sort of like physiological arousal, like music, headphones, and something that gets the heart rate going, that to me, and like that's a downfall, I think. Like obviously, and there's been times, don't get me wrong, where you can't find a Red Bull or you don't have pre-workout. But if I have, if whatever pre-workouts cost $50, $100 to my name and I can buy one thing, like, and I think it's kind of twofold. One, I have no problem getting my protein intake from food. I'm somewhat of a bottomless pit. I have no problem gaining weight. Now I have a harder time losing weight because I can put food back so easily and it doesn't really hit the sides. Like me at a 500 calorie deficit, I feel like I'm fucking just melting. Like I get to like noon and I'm like, I'm going to die. But with I really struggle, and probably because honestly, probably because of this shit. Like this is how I used to get hyped up for workouts. It's like it's like watching, honestly, me taking pre-workout now is like watching alcoholics drink non-alcoholic beer. It's literally just like, it's just like, oh, where was I? I was in a bathhouse in New York. And who was I with? I was with Don Saladino, and I was at the Russian Turkish baths down in Fidei, down by Wall Street. And there was this guy who looked like he'd been in there for 40 years, just sitting in the hot tub, who just would tell you every type of Wolf of Wall Street story. We sat in the hot tub with him, and he told us about how he'd gotten sober. And like 20 minutes, he just is describing his road to sobriety. He's talking about different bars that specialize in like non-alcoholic beverages that actually taste like the real thing. And I could just tell by the time the conversation was over, I'm like, man, this guy's totally off the wagon. Like, this guy's going to get a fucking drink right now. And honestly, like, I wouldn't change it, but like, I do think like when you've, and are you competing again anytime soon?
There's nothing on the calendar.
Okay. I mean, I've gone as far as taking Adderall pre-training, and okay. So, I already feel bad enough that I probably implicate you for a lot of drug use just with you being my friend. I'm not trying to do it deliberately, but like there is something to be said that like, look, when you've crossed the Rubicon and you've gone like the stim of all stims, there's no real going back, right? Once you make the health conscious choice that I'm like, okay, all of my pre-workouts now cannot be found on PubMed under stroke case studies. You're like, well, are you really hitting the side? But for me, that's kind of twofold when I look at supplementation. And I think there's some things to tease out of here of actual value other than us just reminiscing about being crackhead teenagers. And I think it's about understanding your bottleneck, right? As I think when it comes to training, and as inevitably, if you take training seriously, and I'm not saying you're not serious if you're not talking about supplementation, but when you try to have these extreme goals where like you're trying to, like, what cutting weight is probably one of the more extreme goals of like, okay, you're trying to keep performance high without an energy source. You need to, whether it is whey protein that's trying to offset the caloric load that carries with getting your protein intake from normal food sources, or it's trying to have, some sort of energy to perform whatever task you're trying to perform with a lack of calories, which is the unit of energy that our body transacts in. Supplementation, if you do this long enough, is going to be something that's on your radar. Now, I encourage a lot of people to start, if they're looking at supplementation, usually start looking the health route first, right? Most of our clients are a little bit, they're not teenagers. I don't train any teenagers anymore. I mean, early 20s will be about as young as that I get. But I find the conversations I'm having around supplementation are really about removing bottlenecks first and foremost, right? I think, if you're just starting to train and you don't know what it's like to take methamphetamines before training, then we can build to that. But like, let's start with removing the bottleneck first. And I think it's interesting that for me, and it's not as bad now, but like I look at my bottleneck as physiological arousal and preparation to actually perform the task. Like that's my bottleneck. Like I'm not so particular that if the music song isn't right or if I don't have my headphones, I'm going to go home. But I know that what's not my bottleneck is getting back 260 to 300 grams of protein a day without a shake. I can do that with relative ease. I can do that in 3 meals, no problem. So I think when you look at that and you go, okay, what are bottlenecks to performance that supplementation can help with? I think that's an interesting kind of first glance at this ritual, because it does become ritualistic, right? I think supplementation, given the timeliness of it, whether it has to be taken with food, whether it has to be taken upon awakening or before sleep, there is a ritualistic aspect to it. It's like a habit stacking, to kind of like sample from James Clear, the old Atomic Habits book. So I think for me, that's like a good opening consideration for people looking to start taking supplements is, what's the bottleneck, right? What's the bottleneck to performance?
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think for a lot of people, like and especially if it's someone that's looking towards supplementation, that's someone that they probably care about their workouts. They're probably working out consistently, and they're at a point where they're starting to ask the question, how can I get more out of this? So it's interesting to me that pre-workout is that one for you. And like, I get that because like you're tried and true, man. You're a vet in the gym. Like you've been fucking doing it. But I think there's this kind of, and one of the last teenagers that I've trained, I trained him since he was like 14 until he was like right 22 when I stopped training him. And I watched him go through this like I don't really want to work out. Like I'm here because my parents are making me do it. I want to play sports and like all this shit. And then kind of latch onto training and get pulled in and be like, oh, training's fucking sick. Like I'm getting strong. I want to do this. Like I'm super motivated. And then that's when like people get to this point in training and they start just doing everything that they can in the gym. And like they're training probably more than they should be training. So that's kind of the intersection in people's training career where I see they start to turn to supplementation. I know it's not 100% true, but that's like my people that I'm talking to. Like that's true of them. Like I think there's a lot of people now who they listen to a podcast and they think that they need to get more fiber in their diet and like all this stuff. And I think there is kind of that subset of people that turn to supplementation, but people that are like about training, I think that's kind of how they get there, is that they start to overextend themselves in the gym and they're like, all right, I need to figure out a way that I can continue to capitalize on this work because I'm not recovering enough. And I think that's kind of where I see a lot of people getting into supplementation. And like, that's when I'm talking like, kind of like I said, like whey protein is going to be, probably one of your better sources in terms of supplementation for recovery. Creatine for both like preparedness and recovery. I think it makes a pretty big difference when you're taking creatine consistently versus when you're not. And then outside of that, like, for me, it's kind of the sleeper supplements that you don't really feel much from, but they just allow you to physiologically do what you need to do to recover, like the magnesium, vitamin D, like zinc. I'd kind of put all of those into that category. And that's something that like, I don't know how I got onto this. Probably some fucking dumb niche magazine article when I was like 16. But one of the ones I started taking like super early on was ZMA. It was just like
Yeah.
zinc and magnesium. Yeah. And it was like, the poor person's like test booster was kind of like how it was marketed back in the day. Um, but that's one that I felt a pretty good difference in the quality of my sleep from supplementing with zinc and magnesium. And that's something that stuck with me like my entire training career. That's something that like to this day, if I'm traveling, like I'm not bringing any supplements, I might bring like a couple like one use protein powders and a bottle of magnesium for before bed. And that's like kind of my go-to stack. And I think that like a lot of people that are getting into the point where they're debating supplementation, like I think that's kind of where they should start, is like these tried and true supplements that are going to enhance on both sides of it, your recovery and your preparedness through recovery, like protein, creatine, magnesium. Like I think that's a pretty solid starting point that pretty much everyone can benefit from.
All right, guys, we'll get back to the episode in just a second. If you listen to the podcast, you know I've spoken about Spoken Nutrition in the past. Spoken Nutrition is not just a partner with the podcast, it's also something that I was a part of from the beginning. So one of the founding formulators of Spoken Nutrition. And today I want to talk about a particular product, Sleep Builder. Sleep's an issue that a lot of people have. Now with me, if you guys have been following, I travel a lot. I travel as much as airline pilots. So you want to stay away from products that have sort of binding agents, melatonin, herbals, things like that. And a lot of supplement companies out there right now are just making sleeping pills, right? They're really just making tranquilizers that are trying to knock you out, but it's not about sleep, it's what you do with it. Simple product, 7 ingredients, guaranteed to get you better sleep, decreased sleep onset latency, deeper sleep, longer time in restorative sleep, and then more productive. So even if I have a night where I know I'm only going to get 3 or 4 hours, which unfortunately happens a lot, I'm still taking this. It allows that 3 or 4 hours to be of a higher quality. Like everything at Spoken Nutrition, it's quality first. So head on over to spokennutrition.com/RX'D. All RX'D radio listeners get 15% off. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, I think it's food, hydration, sleep are probably like these are the three talking points that kind of come up the most of like, all right, if you're going to go down this road, what is the status of these three variables in your life currently? Because it's easy. Pre-workouts taste good, for example. It's easy to like want something that tastes good before you train, and that actually be the motivating factor, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, well, if you're at that intersection, as you sort of alluded to, of like training has become so serious that you're now at a point where you want to facilitate more progress with nutritional interventions like supplements. It's like, okay, have you filled these three buckets, right? Have you filled this bucket of, where is your sleep at, where is your hydration, and where is your nutrition? And those kind of go hand in hand. Like, I know people who are sort of chronically dehydrated are also people who don't tend to sleep well, right? People who don't eat like a proper macronutrient ratio and a micronutrient rich diet tend to not be too worried about their hydration. And usually if those two things are off, the third one, sleep, is kind of off at the same time. Now, I'm not a person that goes, don't touch this stuff until you've achieved X, Y, and Z, right? Well, until we get our sleep. It's like, well, supplementation, as you mentioned, can be a good way to achieve that, right? Like, it's like we formulated Sleep Builder through Spoken. Jay Marsh, throw the ad. And it is now, we've had it for like a year and a half, or I've had it for a year and a half. It hasn't been on the market that long. It is the most consistent supplement that I've ever taken. Because I think when one of the things I was talking to Andy O'Brien, one of the guys who formulated it alongside me, and he's like, sleep is about momentum. And I think in a lot of ways, performance is about momentum too, right? He's like supporting the physiological process of sleep. And this is something that I said before. It's like sleep isn't a thing, it's a process, right? Because one of the things you mentioned earlier, you kind of like smirked as you said it, about ZMA being the poor man's test booster. And I mean, if ZMA does nothing else other than, and it does, but if it does nothing else other than facilitate better sleep momentum, then it, by extension of that, will be a great testosterone booster.
Right.
The thing that, and this is where like, there's a difference between principle and practice, right? There's a difference between theory and execution. And I just think when we look at a lot of the theory-based supplements around sleep, have you ever tried any of the herbals? Like, have you ever tried ashwagandha, or have you ever tried, melatonin is kind of in a class of his own, but have you ever tried any like herbal sleep supplements?
So sleep is one of the biggest things I've found impacts my training and just like my mental cognition. So I've tried a lot of them. I've tried ashwagandha. Valerian is another one that I tend to like. What else do we got in that family? I mean, I've tried melatonin. I'm not a fan of melatonin. I think those are kind of the main ones that I've tried.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried off, and obviously, different biochemistry, different people, but like melatonin and herbals have like this binding property to it that starts to, I mean, again, using the word momentum, and I stole it from Andy, but it starts to create like negative momentum. Like, I think of like using ashwagandha or melatonin, like there's this phenomenon in hockey, and I'm sure it's fairly well documented. I noticed it throughout my career, where like going into the third period with a 3-1 lead is the worst lead in hockey, right? Because like it's just comfortable enough where you're like, we're 20 minutes and we're out, we're chilling, but it's just close enough that you can narrow the gap really quickly. You come out flat in the second period or into the third period, and then they pot a quick one. And I'd be interested to see, someone has used AI to run the statistics on how many people have blown a 3-1 lead. And I think about those type of agents, and I think about the popularity of things like ashwagandha, valerian root, like these herbals and these binding agents. And think about this idea of like physiological momentum. It's like grogginess the next day starts to build negative momentum towards the goal, right?
Yeah.
And his performance is obviously tied directly to it. And I think it's a very similar fashion. Like, performance has like this momentum to it where you start getting in like a groove of training. And anyone who's worked out for a while can attribute that feeling, or knows what I'm talking about. And sleep is one where I find it's very tricky to to find products that build momentum, because I've taken sleep products and not had good sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Easily, right? Like that's like, but it's looking at the process of sleep and how do you physiologically support it? Because we talked about this on a podcast the other week. It's like filling up levels of micronutrition, or in this case, even hormones, if we're talking about testosterone, is not just like oh, your magnesium's low, let's pour some magnesium in, right? Or your testosterone is low, let's pour some testosterone in, right? There's physiological processes that help support this. So I think you made a good point about sort of this cluster of well-known supplements that you aren't going to feel. And I think it brings up a broader point around supplementation and blood work, right? I think it's going to remove the guesswork, because I think we can sit back and go like, all right, if I have to mass prescribe safe supplements that, you know, you're not going to come anywhere near an upper limit, that probably don't have an LD50, that, you know, you could test, maybe at worst you take too much magnesium and you figure out where the limit is because you're sitting on the toilet going, okay, that was too much. Vitamin C works pretty similar. That's pretty much the warning shot for most over-the-counter supplements. Fish oil, vitamin C, magnesium is like, all right, stomach got a little bit upset. There's a bright line somewhere that's like 100 milligrams less or 200 milligrams less. So other than GI distress, you're pretty safe. It's like zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, K1, K2, fish oil, creatine, protein, right? Is that kind of, does that hit for the cycle?
Yeah. Vitamin D is an interesting one because it is a fat soluble vitamin, which would dictate that you probably could have some level of toxicity at a certain point. But with the level that even I've taken 20,000 IUs a day for like months at a time, and like I get blood done and I'm within normal range, like on my vitamin D, when like I've taken 5,000 IU for like years and I'm low on vitamin D. So that's an interesting one that I don't really know enough about it to talk about it, but I know with like other fat soluble vitamins, you have to be like vitamin E is one you have to be a little bit careful with. But I don't know that I've seen or heard of any negative effects from like mega dosing these things.
Yeah, and vitamin D, per the research, is one of the more deficient across the board vitamins out there, right? It's usually magnesium and vitamin D, I think, are kind of 1-2 as far as deficiencies go. So it's like you could go that route. You could go the broad spec safe approach, but it's like if you want to enter into supplementation, having blood work is just going to narrow your cluster. Be like, okay, here's where I need to shoot to get the best bang for your buck. Because I don't think there's anything wrong in going through that top 6 lineup and just throwing them in. However, getting blood work is going to be the most consistent way to, one, measure objectively your progress. And I think that's something that I didn't know up until like, honestly, kind of recently. Like I would say in the last 6 months, and I've had like fits and starts over the years, but like what it felt like to feel good. Like I have, like it feels really good, and you just don't know, because like you assume. I based my feeling off of, am I alive? Yes, then that feels pretty good, right? Like I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but I've showed you pictures of my diastolic blood pressure being in the triple digits, like 111, 113. Like I had diastolic blood pressure higher than most people's systolic blood pressure.
That's crazy.
And it's like, it's honestly only in the last, I would say, maybe 6 months, if that, where it's like getting blood work, flagging some of these things. I was literally like, I have a blood pressure cuff next to my desk. And it's like, that has helped curtail my supplementation. And it's done 2 things. I wouldn't say I'm as stim heavy by total numbers as you. Like you and I would train together. And you know what it is? I don't think I like coffee as much as you do. I think that's the big delta. Yeah. Like if you take your affinity for coffee out, like the only caffeine I have, and I mean, I'll have this is the same coffee that is sitting on my desk since yesterday. And I've just sort of been periodically, which I don't know if that's good for you. But other than that, like I have a coffee a day, maybe if I get through it, and it's like a fucking cappuccino. There's nothing, just 2 shots of espresso.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is really like around my training. I would say since trying to go after some of these lab values, and as a byproduct of that, like what am I supplementing? A lot of it's magnesium, a lot of it is vitamin D. Those 2 supplements alone are part of this momentum process of performance, right? Like it was something that I got in the habit of doing when I was traveling. But in traveling, for me, it's really about just putting out fires, right? Like you know this as well as anyone. Like, you know, the subtle time shift from East Coast to West Coast, you know, United States or continental North America, you're waking up at 3 a.m, where you're like want to go to bed at 4 some days, or you're on the flip side of that where you're going to bed at 3 and we wake up at 6. You're like, fuck, God, this sucks. And it's like when I was on the road, I would supplement heavy with vitamin D in the morning and heavy magnesium at night. And I would try and, you know, support those processes, but you're trying to support it because the environment is putting you behind the 8 ball, right? The reason that I would supplement that way is because, well, I was always in a different time zone. And it's not like I knew what it was like to supplement that way and be in the same time zone or be in the same city or be in the same bed or train in the same gym for longer than like a week at a time. So it's like, you know, that momentum begins to build. And I think what you'll find, and what I find in looking at people's blood work, whether it's patients or clients or athletes or even like other coaches that we just sort of talk about it and kind of kick the tires on what can be improved upon, you kind of see the markers that are consistent with this lack of momentum, right? Inflammation markers are high, right? You start to see your cholesterol ratios get out of whack. And it's like, I remember being a kid, and look, God bless my parents, but they didn't know fuck about dick when it came to health. Like not even a little bit. Like I was like kind of ostracized at the kitchen table in my house for not drinking full sugar Pepsi when I was 14. Ooh. That was like a new development in my house. I was like groundbreaking scientific research. I don't think I should be having 72 grams of sugar with my mic. And I remember sitting there like, I felt like fucking Matilda. Right? Like I just sit there as like this outcast. I mean, my parents still drink. I'm like, you guys are out of your fucking minds. I just drank water from 14 to when I competed in like Australia. I didn't have Diet Coke until I flew to Australia for my, to compete at the Arnold's in 2017. So what's that? Almost a decade, maybe a little bit longer, 12, 13 years. I didn't touch it because it was only full sugar shit in the house. I was like, oh, that's probably not good. And then I just drank water. And then I never drank carbonated beverages until I was like starving on the airplane. But it's like when you start to see some of the blood sugar is another one, these physiological markers that go out of place, cortisol levels through the roof. And if you start looking at supplementation through this idea of building momentum, one of the reasons that helped me is it helps you be okay with the fact that you don't feel anything. Yeah. Because adherence is almost the hardest part, right? Like, especially when your first introduction into supplementation was Requiem for a Dream, right? You were literally like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then someone tells you have to take fish oil forever. And you're like, yeah, but when do I rip the steering wheel out of my car? Like, when do I feel like a fucking, you know, a superhero? So I think this idea, and, you know, Sleep Builder, J March, run the ad again, is use code RXRadio at spokennutrition.com. It's this idea that like, look, supplementation is really about playing the long game, and the long game is about building momentum. And I think one of the things that's tough for people who don't feel good is they don't know what feeling good feels like. And I think setting a longer term trajectory on supplemental intervention and build this idea of like tracking your training, tracking your intake, tracking your hydration, your food, your water, your sleep. These are all things that are useful to help start to pick up as you're building momentum. Because like I remember when you were really like when you would compete often and you had to cut weight, like how good you were, and not that you had to, but how good you were at like eyeballing macros of food. Like you didn't have to pull out an app, you just knew by looking at it. I have no idea, dude. Even to this day, I'm so bad at it. I have like, if I don't take a picture of it and let ChatGPT guesstimate, I have no fucking clue.
Too good. No, I think you made a lot of really good points there. And I really like the idea of building momentum towards better sleep, better training, and how it all kind of positively reinforces one another. Because one of the things that I've found that is the best way to get better sleep is to be really fucking tired. So if you train really fucking hard, like you're going to want to go to sleep. But it is this like they can negatively reinforce one another, or they could positively reinforce one another. And even like you said, like people that don't feel good don't know what it's like to feel good. And I'll take it one step further, is that if you don't feel good, the step to getting to feel good is going to feel worse before it feels better, right? Like making the change of, I quit Zins for like probably a week. Now it was probably like 2 or 3 weeks.
Really? When?
When my blood pressure was like really out of whack.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I need to chill on the stims. I need to chill on the caffeine and the nicotine. And like, I found myself like, I actually started drinking. I don't drink diet soda often, but I started drinking Diet Coke like pretty regularly because I'm like, I need something to make me happy about today. And I need something that tastes good, at least, if there's not going to be anything that makes me feel good. And I think a lot of people that don't feel good, they're kind of chasing that dopamine rush, whether it's like staying up late, scrolling the internet, or whatever they're filling their times with, eating like I don't know, like a donut with your coffee in the morning, like things like this. You're chasing these like little hits of dopamine throughout the day because overall you're not feeling good, or you're not getting those hits of dopamine from big things that like are huge sources of feeling good, which is exercise, like getting that kind of high off of an exercise, and waking up feeling well rested, and like not necessarily needing some sort of pick me up to start your day. So I think it really truly is like this sort of thing of building momentum. But the thing is, like, you have to take the plunge. Like you have to pass up on the donut and maybe eat some oatmeal and berries in the morning. And then like you have to be taking these supplements that, maybe you don't feel anything immediately, but all of these little things, they start to push the needle so that you're getting a better night's sleep. You're getting a better training session. And then these things, they have like a summated response. The more of these things that we have in closer proximity, then it amplifies the effect of every single one of these things. And that's the way I look at that kind of building momentum analogy, is that, all right, this is something that's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to build habits around it. You're going to have to make some changes. It's not necessarily going to be easy, and it's not going to feel good right away. But if you do these and you stick to these things, then that's going to be the thing in itself that allows you to have continual progress. And then you're feeding off of like that, I don't know, maybe bigger wave of kind of, I'm using the word dopamine. I'm an idiot. I don't know if that's what it actually is, but like I got a good workout. I was mentally sharp. I performed well at work today, and like I'm tired at the end of the day. I'm going to go to sleep, and then you perpetuate that cycle over and over again. And that's something that it takes a lot of self-control and restraint to not chase those things that are going to maybe make you feel good for a little bit of time, and you're going to crash and you're going to have a bad time continually over a longer period of time because of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, for me, like, and being someone who is like so sensory driven, like very sensitive, not in the sense that, I'm going to watch like Bridget Jones's Diary and cry or something, but sensitive in the fact that like, I noticed like very little change of improvement. Matt got me on water. Matt came, he goes like, "Hey, have you heard of this
What a
stuff?"
wild statement.
I'm like, well, they did what? What did they do with hydrogen? You're telling me and oxygen? That is crazy. Give me some of that shit. But like, you can't be around Macintosh and not just be a better person.
Oh,
and so like my water intake this year has improved drastically. But it's like one of the things that really got me on board and like gamified this. And it's funny because I'll ask people, I mean, you know me, I'll talk to fucking anyone. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I will talk to anyone at any point about anything. One of the things I've gotten in the habit of doing recently is talking to people who wear like biometric devices, whether it's Apple Watches and I see them using it in some sort of like health tracking capacity, or Whoop bands or Oura rings. And I ask them if they've done their blood work. And to me, it is such a hilarious, maybe a very me way to look at it, but I can't look at it any other way, I suppose. It is, the numbers anecdotally are staggering of who is willing to invest whatever these things cost versus what is the upfront cost of blood work. Because, and again, shout out Marek Health, marekhealth.com/RX'D. If you guys are interested, it's who does our blood work. And it's really one of the things that catalyzed this for me was, okay, you're going to have some sort of arbitrary, proprietary formula tell you how you feel. And it'll ebb and flow. Don't get me wrong. I was on Will Ahmed's podcast back in the day when Whoop was first on the come up. Did a sponsored thing with them. I was a part of a group that we would all have our strain scores, and Will Ahmed was in my group. And I remember I would wake up. Now this is like peak building the business era. This is peak like I'm on the road, still competing in powerlifting and all that entails. And I remember waking up with the strain score, and I don't know if it's the same now, but the highest strain score you could get on Whoop was 21. I would wake up from what sleep I would get with 21 on the scoreboard. I'm like, did I win? And the thing is, like, you know, I just kind of like, okay, I still got to I still train, I still do whatever. And you wake up the next day and it was like, maybe it was like yellow and it was a lower number, and then it was like green. But it's like, okay, if you're going to commit to collecting data, be objective with it. Right? Like, because the way that my brain works is that I would look at this thing, and nothing against the product in any of them. You know, Oura Ring is obviously doing quite well as a company, and I think they've done a lot to bring consciousness to health and to help people to be conscious and aware. But man, can we get the straight dope? Like, can we get the objective numbers? Because when I start to look at, like, when I saw my last blood panel, it was like, okay, I am not a stranger to delayed gratification, right? Like, you and I slogged through shit forever to build a business, knowing one day that it would like kind of work out, and it kind of has. So when I look at Bloodwork and I go, oh, this is a tangible snapshot of why I feel the way I do. I don't register necessarily that I feel bad, but I know when these numbers start to move, I'm going to feel better. So rather than looking at this subjective thing on my phone every morning that's giving me some sort of logarithmic subjective interpretation to which I am then going to subjectively decipher. It's like there's too much subjectivity in this data collection interpretation process. I need an objective intervention, because when I look at my bloods and I go, okay, this is off, this is off, this is off, I then look at my supplement counter and go, it's almost like I got to prepare for a test, like a blood test. That in 3 months, I'm going to have another blood test. And I've not necessarily failed, but I'm deficient in these categories of the blood test. So although I may not be feeling anything, the hope will be that if I am compliant to this supplement structure, that this will change. And then, oh, lo and behold, as things start to improve based off of the objective data. And I honestly am a firm believer that what you're getting from fitness wearables is not objective data. Even the step count is suspect, right? And it's like that's a subjective interpretation. It's a subjective representation of data, but it's not objective data itself. It's like the number of people I talk to that wear a wearable and are trying to signal that they are, cognizant of their health. It's like you're cognizant of another subjective data point, right? It's like having a caddy. It's like, what the fuck does this guy know? Right? He's walked around this golf course a bunch of times. It's old Happy Gilmore. It's like, no, the green just looks sloped because you're not wearing a left shoe, right? It's not objective. So I just think, like, if you're going to enter into this realm, if you're at that intersection that you sort of laid out, where you take training seriously, or if you take health seriously, right? We talk, obviously, when we say training, you and I mean going in the gym and lifting weights. Pilates, for whatever good it does, if it's your foot in the door of training and you're tracking metrics, track the only one that matters, right? Because that's the thing that will keep you compliant. Because it's not. I think having daily access for physiological processes that take longer than a 24-hour cycle to correct themselves, I think is somewhat doing you a disservice, because it removes you from this delayed gratification arc of the necessary physiological changes to start to improve your underlying health, which will then improve your performance, which will then improve your health. So when you're trying to kickstart this engine, this physical engine of your body, having the too much access, I think, is doing you a disservice. I just think, because these changes, like if I give myself a 3-month interval to do blood work, that's actually kind of an aggressive turnaround, right? Yeah. Now, I was in like a pretty shitty spot, so I'm like, I'm going to make some aggressive changes. But from blood work to blood work, between it's almost like losing weight in a sense. And these two things run hand in hand. It's like, if I weigh myself every day and I just start a diet, I might see some considerable changes, right? Like if I just don't eat dessert tonight, I'll drop 5 pounds. I'm fucking 206 pounds, whatever it is. But if I get under like 240, I'm probably going to weigh myself once a week, because the changes that it takes for me at 240 to get to 239 or 239 and a half are not like, oh, I just don't eat dessert. Well, I haven't ate dessert in 6 months. Now I'm 240, right? So it's something where understanding how the measurement affects the outcome, right? I was talking to Taylor Thiessen the other day, and he brought up there's an economic principle to that of like when the thing you measure becomes more important than the reason you're measuring it, that's when you're a bit lost. And that's something that I find consistent with people that wear fitness wearables. It's like, okay, do the damn blood work, point your supplement nutrition arrow at these targets, and then understand that these things take time, reevaluate in 3 to 6 months. And then you're going to notice that, hey, as these values move, this is what feeling good feels like, rather than just checking your watch or your phone every morning and being like, I guess I feel good, because that's subjective leading subjective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a really good point that you bring up is the objectivity of actually having blood work done, because there are objective things then you can draw a line back to, and you can start to understand how they're connected, right? Like, what are the tools that you have at your disposal to affect what happens on your objective blood work now, 3 months, 6 months from now? And that's diet, sleep, exercise, supplementation. Like, that's kind of it. Like, I guess medication at a certain point as well, but like in the landscape we're talking about this stuff, we're talking kind of a subclinical level. Like, sure, some of it there will be times where yeah, we need medication, we need to have a clinician involved, but for someone that's generally healthy and they're looking around supplementation, like, this is the fucking hack. Like, get your blood work done and then understand how the objective things that you're doing every single day are the exact correlation to why that looks the way it does. Like, those are the reason that it looks the way it does. And if you want to change that, then you need to look at the things that you are doing every single day that are impacting that, or the things that you're not doing. And that's supplementation, that's diet, that's sleep, that's stress management. There's only so many tools that we have that impact this, and the correlations are pretty well understood at this point. So it's like it puts some responsibility on the user then to understand, like, all right, this is what my blood work looks like. And okay, maybe you don't know how to interpret that, but there is someone that can help you interpret that, and you get that interpretation, then you either make those changes or you don't. And then it's either going to change because you made those changes, or it's not going to change because you didn't on your next blood lab. So that's the important part of this, is that like there's tangible things that are in your control that will change those objective measures. You just have to do them.
If you're in America, MarekHealth.com/RX'D, link in the show note, 10% off your first blood lab with Marek. And if you're in the world, SpokenNutrition.com/RX'D, promo code already applied. Look, I mean, supplementation in some ways is so similar to training. I think a lot of people I would say the majority of people get into supplementation through training. Not many people get into training through supplementation. And I think it's, if you can take the same, and it is interesting because when I watch people who I know are critical and cerebral in the way that they approach training, get into supplementation and nutrition, I'm like, sorry, are you the same person that I was talking to over there about exercise? Because this approach sounds insane. Like, you're taking this perfect amino acid thing. Did you not think critically at all about this? You're taking the Barry's boot camp of supplements, and yet you're putting together a bespoke, tailor-made exercise program with a lot of personal customization and variation. Take that same level of rigor and critical thinking and apply it to this sort of metabolic engine that drives your training. And like, it is wild to me how people's critical thinking doesn't take that leap over into the nutritional space. So links in the bio for Marek Health and Spoken Nutrition, episode 7,421 at RX Radio. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.